Hi, everybody, and welcome to Drop Shot, where the love for tennis meets the thrill of competition. My name is Michele Dinella, and I will be your host and fellow tennis enthusiast. Join me on my personal tennis journey from the clay courts of southern Italy to the bustling streets of Washington, D.C. In each episode, my guests and I will share personal experiences, we'll comment on Grand Slams, analyze players and stats, and even offer tips on gear and apparel. Whether you are a seasoned pro or maybe just picking up a racket, sit back and get ready to serve, volley, and ace your way through the fascinating world of tennis. All right. Welcome to the first real episode of Drop Shot, a podcast about tennis things. My name is Michele Dinella, and I will be your host for this journey into this marvelous sport. And with me today, there is a guest that you will learn to know and to appreciate. My friend, my fellow Italian, Stefano Tognazzi. Hello, Stefano.
Hello, Michele. It is an absolute pleasure to be here and to be your first guest again in another podcast. It's going to be very interesting, and I'm very looking forward to talk about tennis.
Absolutely. And a first disclaimer that I want to do to our listeners, which I imagine will be mostly from the United States or English speakers anyway. Forgive us for our wonky Italian accents. Sometimes we are doing our best to conceal it, but sometimes, it's just, we're just passionate people. It just comes out, and so we can't do much about that. And I think Stefano has a nice story to tell you to start and break the ice in regards to that.
Oh, well, when I started studying and growing up, my English was mostly from watching at a lot of baseball and American football. So I had quite a neutral American accent. And then during my PhD, which was predominantly Italian people, I started to mock the way they were talking. And I ended up having a very, very big Italian accent nowadays. But yeah, not much I can do about it now. It's kind of too late to go back.
Yeah. Something about Stefano is that he lives in London, UK, and I'm based right now in Washington, D.C. I've been living here for a couple of years. I did grad school here, and it was a great opportunity for me to pick up tennis again after a pretty long hiatus not playing. But being here in the United States really sprung my passion for this sport again, and now I can't be like without playing for more than 2 3 days in a row. So that's just how obsessed I am with this sport. I like to play a lot myself. I am crazy about the apparel and the gear, rackets, shoes, and everything. So the idea, the vision that I had for this podcast is to do a commentary of the biggest tournaments, just like we are going to do today, but also dedicate some of the episodes to single individual players and their escalate to success, but also to more technical and analytical data. Just like we're going to do with Stefano today. He's the statistics guy for this episode. I'm more about the emotion and the passion, as you will see, of these sports. But let's not go on a tangent and get back into the main theme of this episode, which is the Madrid Open 2024. It was a tournament that was very different from what the bookmakers had expected. I have to say, especially when it comes to ATP, so the men's side of the tournament. We had some major injuries from from a few of the biggest stars in the tournament. And I would like to start from the men, just because I believe that on the competition side, um, we have a lot more to talk about when it comes to the women. So we keep the best for later. And I want to start from some of the highlights of the Madrid ATP, um, including the fact that it was basically Nadal's last game in Spain. It was his farewell to Spain. And I imagined that he would have liked to, advance a little more in the tournament, but he kind of got stuck at the quarterfinals against Lehechka. And so I would like to start from that with Stefano. I watched that game, and of course, Nadal is technique wise as brilliant as he's always been, but I saw him a little bit fatigued when it comes to the running side. I saw him a bit slower than I remember, even for the latest years Nadal. So, what happened there, according to you, Stefano?
Yes. First, if I may go back to the tangent we were taking earlier, I want to say that I don't just live in London, but I actually work in Wimbledon, which is one of the most sacred places for tennis. And I managed to queue every single day to the tournament last year. So I'm more of a watcher. I don't play tennis, but I do like the statistical aspects and going actually to see as many games as I can live. So let's start with Nadal. So if you recall, he actually lost against Deminor to get eliminated in Monte Carlo. So his tournament started as with a protected ranking. So he's still getting some of the entrances to the tournaments because of his injuries. And he got drawn against a wild card from the US, Darwin Blanche. He is from 2007, so he's still, I believe, 16 years old. He has to turn 17 this year, and he dropped only a single game, Nadal. And then he was against Deminor again. This is what I also like about sports, like these recurring rivalries that come up by the chance of the draw, actually. And he made good, swift work of Deminor. But then the third game was actually what took a toll on his abilities, and I believe you kind of saw it ultimately against Lehechka. He had to come back against Chachin, who actually defeated Tiafo. Quite a surprise, but not the biggest one, in the second round. And he spent quite a lot of time on court that day, I believe. Let me check. It was a 3 hour match. So, yeah, that was hard to recover from, I guess, for Nadal as well. And one note for the Lechka game. Uh, Nadal, he's a big Real Madrid fan, and they
Yeah.
actually went on court after halftime of
Hmm.
the Champions League match. I was like, I was watching him coming after. They definitely allow him to watch the first half and then go out there. Yeah, that's how I thought. It was quite a late start as well. That match, I believe, it started at 10 p.m. local time. So, yeah,
Yeah.
tough luck, but Lechka play good.
Yeah, Lehechka played very well, but he also paid a toll afterwards in the semifinal against Auger-Aliassime, because he himself got injured in the midst of the game, the midst of the semifinal, and it was so painful to see him like that. He was literally on the ground because of the pain. and eventually he had to resign from the game, and I saw him smashing his racket in anger. That's always something bad to see, in my opinion. I really don't like to see that. I might be old school, you can call me whatever you want, but I grew up playing tennis since I was 7 years old, up until my adolescence, 15, 16. And I've been taught not to do that ever. To respect the gear, to respect the opponent, and but I understand in this case he was very much in pain and he was very frustrated, and there was just no match in the semifinal for him, just because of physical reasons. Maybe he gave more than he had against Nadal. But anyway, going back to that game, to that quarterfinal, it was emotional to see Nadal's farewell to Spain, to Madrid, and yeah, as you said, I wish I had that too. I wish I didn't have to go to work or to be exempt from work when there is a body game in Serie B. I'm talking about soccer for those who are clueless in regards to this, but my hometown in Italy, in southern Italy, is Bari, and the team is actually very close to being relegated. We're just on the tightrope, and I wish I could follow all the games, but that's not possible, unfortunately. But yeah, I really enjoyed this farewell from Nadal, and it is this year is the end of an era. We had Federer last year, Nadal this year, and we have a roster of great tennis players coming up, and we have started to see them in the last few tournaments. We've had a great Yannick Sinner. Of course, we are biased because we're both from Italy. There is a huge Carlos Alcaraz, even though he lost in this Madrid Open. But again, let's start from our guy. Let's start from Sinner. Um, I saw that something was wrong in the quarterfinals against Kachanov. Um, because he had to come back, and that's something that usually Sinner in his games doesn't like to do. He likes to close the deal as soon as he can. He's not one that, like, for example, Rublev, he enjoys coming back, and he actually gets fired up when the game becomes difficult. He had some physical issues, and I could see that already. In fact, in the semifinal, he didn't even show up against Auger-Aliassime, um, because of that. So, what do you think is the problem with Sinner?
So first, a small note: the match for Nadal was the round of 16,
The round of 16, yeah.
and why you don't remember the quarterfinal of Lechka is because he actually played less than an hour, and then Medvedev retired
Hmm.
from that match. So very, very easy to skip by. Also, yeah, we can talk about it as well. Also, Medvedev had to drop from the tournament with an injury as well. Sinner was carrying an injury from Monte Carlo, latter stages of the match against the Tsitsipas there. And yeah, for me, it was shocking to see his second match against Kotov. I think it was still in the first set. He made a slide, he stopped, and he laughed at his corner. And Vagnozzi, his coach, was like, "Well, you can't do that. Like, you can't just stop a point." And Sinner turned and said, "Like, if I keep doing this, I will get hurt." And Vagnozzi replied, "Well, let's try to win a match playing this way then." And I couldn't understand if it was said in like sarcastic way, like do it your own way and let's see if you can win, or if there was a bit of conflict. But you could see that he was feeling that something was
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
And against Chakhanov, it was a great match. Actually, I really enjoyed the match. But he won playing 60%, and he won mainly because he was able to frustrate him enough in the second and third set, so that kind of Chakhanov kind of uh, went into his own way up to the point that he actually lost. Yeah, and you could see it. You like the psychological aspect of it when he started like
Mhm.
smashing the racket in the third set. You could see that that match was kind of gone, and he was going
Yeah.
this way.
When that happens, it's over. It's over, guys. Unless, as a player, you have to the mental strength to regroup, and maybe the set ends, and you're so lucky that you have another set in front of you, and then you can come back a brand new person. But that is very, very rare. Rare. Let's say you win the first one, and then you start losing the second one. You smash your racket, and you end up losing that set. How on earth are you gonna come back on the first set and fix things? I think it's very hard, and you made a great analysis of this match. Sinner, even though it was half service, it was at his 50% or less, he still was able to uh, smart his way through this game. But again, as you said, he was very aware, and that's something that really strikes me of this athlete, Yannick Sinner. His awareness of both his body and his mind, his state in general. He's, I think, a hyper analytical person and player, and he has constantly the situation under control. And what makes me a bit sad, if I can say that, is how the media and the public opinion reacted to his decision of not playing against Auger. Um, I understand where he comes from, but it seems like the public just wants him in Italy to win every tournament, every game that he participates to, and that's what he has been saying for the last couple of months, and even more. I cannot win. I'm not going to win every single tournament. And he has been saying that when he was at the top, when he won uh, the slams and the tournaments. So just his awareness is something remarkable to me.
Yeah, given his young age, but there's also the argument of being too conservative with your body. Obviously, from the outside, we cannot say what he has or any player has. Actually, we might end up talking about it when we're going to talk about Rublev as well. Um, so yeah, it's very hard, and I think the press, especially the Italian one, it's very harsh on Sinner anyway. I don't know why it's been like that throughout his whole career. So yeah, this might be a surprise for our American listeners, but yeah, that's the way it is. I don't like it as well. He's way more praised across also like here in the UK and everything, and it's completely understandable to not show up for a match if you actually can't play. Actually, from fans' perspective and from outside, we're so used to look at these players as kind of like unbreakable machines, and we expect them that when they go on court, they will always be 100%. But that's just not how the human nature work, and sometimes we also have to remind ourselves of that. And this tournament was a great example because there were plenty of injuries. And if you don't mind, we can talk about one of the finalists, Aliassime, who basically had the touch of death in this tournament.
Yeah.
He won a couple of games, a couple of matches, met Menisk in the third round. Menisk retired. He had a great match, which I did not expect him to win against Casper Ruud. And then Sinner got hurt, didn't play against him, played against Lehechka in the semifinal. He retired, carrying over the retirement of Medvedev, and ended up in the final. And then himself almost had to retire in the final, receiving treatment in the third set as well. So yeah, very grueling also part of the season for all the players as we can see it. unfold in front of our eyes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Stefano. And I want to spend a few words about Auger because yesterday, I'll tell you this little story. I was playing indoors yesterday and I was playing a double with a few friends. Um, because it was raining outside, and I get to the courts, and I go to pay to the guy, and he had the final on TV live, and of course we were exchanging a few words, and I was saying how unfortunate is Sinner's injury in this tournament, and he was like, "Yeah, this guy Auger has been so lucky so far." And I, on one level, I agree with that, but at the same time, I don't, because and we will get to talk about the final. But let's stay, for example, on the semifinal against Lehechka. Um, he has played very well. The first set, Auger destroyed Lehechka. I have to say this. His serves were hammers. His forehand as well. And he showed that against Rublev, as we will see. So, yeah, he got lucky. He had the touch of death, as you said, but he doesn't deserve from the press and from like the more casual audience to to be talked about like just like a lucky guy. He's young, he's strong. He has very good fundamentals, and I really believe that we are gonna see him at the top in the next few competitions. So I just wanted to spend a few good words about him, because even though his path in this tournament was relatively easy, he did great. I still think, and yeah, I really like him, and we will talk about him in a bit. But I want to go back to the other semifinal, Rublev against Fritz. But before we do that, I want to talk about Rublev's path towards this final, and starting from maybe the game against Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah, that's a good point. I completely agree with what you said on Felix. He was also coming from a very very rough period. Like last year was very rough for him, and I really like his kind of upgraded version. He showed up of himself at this tournament. We can talk about it a bit more when we make it to the final. So yeah, Rublev path was going quite well, not dropping sets against Banyes, a specialist on clay, and Davidovich Fokina as well, also specialist on clay, and won in straight set against Greek Sport. Probably that was the easiest of the matches he had up until the very big match, which was one of the major upsets of the tournaments, along with Aliassime beating Casper Ruud, as we mentioned earlier. And yeah, you can also make the argument here again that, well, Alcaraz maybe he was not fully fit 100%, but yeah, total complete Rublev fashion. He's a well-renowned slow starter, lost the first set, stayed in it, and he's been playing quite well. He played well the whole tournament, but as I said earlier, they are not machines, and he has been open about the fact that since Monday or Tuesday, he was actually ill. So also he was not 100%. So yeah, to see him come out on top against Alcaraz was a bit of a surprise, especially on clay. Uh, but I think that the semifinal and the final from him, I got really impressed, especially in the semifinal against Fritz. That yeah, we are getting to that.
Let me stay on Rublev versus Alcaraz. Let me ask you one thing, because I was also very very surprised that Alcaraz lost. He started off really well in that match, and I thought, okay, the guy is on top of it. He's gonna get to the final as always. I'm a bit biased. I'm not a huge fan of Alcaraz, although I recognize he's one of the biggest players, one of the top players right now in ATP. So yeah, they say Alcaraz was not at his best, but I didn't notice that during the game. He was running like a rabbit as always. He was catching all the balls in the first set. Rublev was throwing at him all he had, but still Alcaraz finished the first set almost unbothered. But then something changed in the second set, and I I don't know what happened. Um, what is, in your opinion, the element that made Rublev switch it against Alcaraz?
Well, you said it very well. It changed at the start of the second set, and it changed right away. And that's kind of like the kind of aggression. And actually, it's very, very interesting when you pair together the second set against Alcaraz and the last set from yesterday final. Basically, Rublev hold serve, losing very, very, very few points on serve, and he immediately attacked the first serve game of Alcaraz. It ended up being quite long and parallel to the second, or actually, yeah, the second game of the last set of the final as well. And this is kind of when you can, from the outside, if you watch games, you can start when a person is struggling to hold serve like this. Game duration goes like 8, 7, 8, 10 minutes is when they start struggling. I believe that also didn't help Alcaraz. Yeah, he was looking good on his legs, but I believe the injury is on his right shoulder or elbow. So that might also have an impact on the quality of his serve. And that's actually, if you look at how many break points Rublev had from the second and third set, yeah, that might be what actually ended up being the difference. Albeit Alcaraz is not known as a great server, but when you already start with a slightly above standard server, and that level drops, they're gonna feast on you. Especially men's players that are good at returning, they're just gonna feast on you and like be very aggressive on every single return, and that's gonna make it way, way hard for you to actually win the point in the rally. So yeah, I think that's kind of like a bit of what I saw from that match. But yeah, again, we will talk about Rublev, which I believe he's showing some progress
Mm-hmm.
with his mental attitude to the
Mm-hmm.
game,
Mm-hmm.
and it clearly showed. Although he's gonna uh, make us sound like a fool because he's gonna get disqualified again the next tournament or something, but he was a little less tantrum heavy as he was in the past, and he kept his head cool in the big moments from that match against Alcaraz on. And yeah, it's actually surprising to see him win his second Masters, both of them on clay, which if you envision Rublev winning major tournaments, they would be on hard. So yeah, hats off to him actually.
Yeah, he's just one of the most Russian guys I know. Like he's so out of control, and that's what makes him strong sometimes, especially in this tournament. Even his style of playing is so punk, I would say. He likes to hit hard, not as hard as other players, but it's just very, very aggressive. And he waits for things to get hard, to get difficult for him before actually stepping it up. It's like even the fact that he was kind of bragging that he was half healed. It's the kind of guy that comes to you and tells you, like, yeah, I could beat you after of a bottle of vodka. That's how I imagine Rublev in my head. And actually, I apologize to our Russian speakers that are listening to us because I know that we should pronounce his name Rublev. But alas, everyone knows him as Rublev. Um, so just very fascinating to me. I like players with an attitude, with personality, and that's also what makes me not like Alcaraz as much, because he's just there, like, responding to everything. You can throw at him anything you want; he will always wall it. But when it comes to like expressing his personality, I think he lacks something. I don't want to be mean, because I know there's a lot of Alcaraz fans out there, and this is our first episode. You don't want haters right away, but yeah, that's just what makes me not be a fan of Carlos Alcaraz, and makes me lean towards someone like Rublev. But let's get to the semifinal against Fritz. Honestly, I think this was not even a challenge for Rublev. Um, I believe that among the four semifinalists, maybe the Auger-Aliassime was the luckiest one, if we can use again that term. But for sure, Fritz didn't have such a difficult path as Rublev and as Lehechka. I don't know what you think about it, Stefan.
I think Ferit's tournament was excellent until the semifinal. You don't expect him to perform extremely well on clay, I would say, and he actually had to face a couple of clay specialists. Well, if you can call Darderia specialists, but yeah, uh, the rank difference there wasn't enough. But then he had a very convincing win against Sebastian Baez, which I would have picked to actually give it a bit of a challenge. And then he beat Hubi Urkac as well on his way to the quarterfinal, where he had to face yet another clay specialist in Francisco Cerundolo, which came off one of the other major upset of the tournament, beating Zverev in the round of 16. So it wasn't definitely an easy path. He made it look easy, which is a great compliment because it was not easy at all. And he was playing pretty good tennis. And he did play very well as well against Rublev. And let's not forget, Fritz is on the verge of the top 10. But if you want to collect some haters, I do love Alcaraz. I do love Rublev, but I don't like Fritz for the same reasons you
Oh no.
said. Maybe the audience will be a bit skewed a bit more towards against me, uh, given that he's definitely one of the biggest US stars. But yeah, I think he does lack a bit of that personality. Going back on Rublev, a good friend of mine, he had a great definition for him, which I believe was Rublev is like a cursed poet, and I truly love it.
Yes. Yes.
And I like 100% subscribe to that. But yeah, the semifinal with Rublev, yeah, they came with approximately the same time on court time, which makes a difference in this type of tournaments. And it was a tough semifinal, and it started right away with a break. So Rublev lost I believe. Let me just check again. Yeah, yes, Rublev lost serve right away in the first game, broke back in the second game, and it looked like a break fest. And then there were basically no breaks at all from that point on. And the only breaks came at the very critical time in the what we call the business end of the set. So Rublev winning 4-6 by breaking in a 10th game in the first set. And again, the second set as well, uh, it was like a decider middle of the set, but like since that point on, he never looked back. And mentally, again, from Rublev broke him in the sixth game of the second set, so to go up 2-4, and he did not lost a single game on serve from that point on, which is remarkable. It was just two games, but he had no chance to come back from that. And
Mhm,
that's just
mhm.
remarkable. And that's actually exactly what he did against Aliassime, especially in the third set. which was very fascinating to see.
We're getting there. Maybe I was a bit too harsh on Fritz, because I really think that he played well. He played at his best throughout the tournament, but in the semifinal against Rublev, you could see that even at his best, he was just outclassed by Rublev after those breaks that you were talking about, and that's what struck me as a spectator. So I think the two are just on different levels right now. But that's just my humble opinion from what I saw in this very game. My I might be wrong in the next tournament. But anyway, let's
There
get
were a
to.
couple of moments there.
Mm,
I believe at the very end of the first set, there was the net cord and then a smash on the break point that everybody thought it was out, but got just a little piece of the line. And that was just so close, and he got into the
yeah,
head of Fritz a bit.
and those
But
things break you. Those things break you because if you're trying to come back, you need signs from the world that are on your side. He maybe just didn't get those signs, and after the first set, I think it was over. Honestly,
yeah, but what was extremely funny is that I think the net cord went in favor of Fritz, and the line kind of smash went in favor of Rublev. So in the great scheme of karma things, they kind of cancel out. But yeah, Rublev apologized afterwards, and I really sometimes don't
hmm
understand. Just put a smash dead on the line. Why would you apologize for that? But yeah, there were a couple of incidents where, yeah, Fritz might have felt that the signs from above were not going his way, or when they were going his way, they were not on crucial points. And sometimes tennis is like that, it's especially at this level. It might come down to those 2, 3 pressure points, and getting a lucky break in one of those can make the whole difference between winning and losing.
yeah, absolutely, Stefano. Take us through the final, Auger-Aliassime versus Rublev. We have finally come to that. Um, and I'll take a break because there's a truck right outside my home. So I'll give you the opportunity to take us through that.
Yeah, so the final last night from Madrid, very interesting final. I mean, the kind of we saw as coming into the game Rublev as quite a heavy favorite, but yeah, Lesim played very little, as we said, so everybody expected him to be a bit fresher on his legs, especially. And I really enjoyed this match.
And
I
he was
think
fresh. He was really fresh, I think.
until the third set when he called the physio, yes.
Yeah.
But again, the same. That's what I found fascinating about sports. The same. The match starts. Rublev is on serve and he loses. Uh, I was actually watching the match. Just turn around 1 second, look back at the television, and they were changing over. And I was like, "Wait, what happened?" And he lost it in an instant. The first game of the first set, and then he got another break in the first set, and then I thought, well, he might be in trouble, but managed to break back. And then you can see as I said earlier, classic Rublev fashion, uh, really kind of embracing a bit of the kind of comeback. He did not hit the racket on his knees as he usually does, which I think is a positive sign for him. And he also mastered a break point in the crucial game of the first set, almost bringing it to 5-5. But then Aliassime won the first set. And what I really enjoyed about this match was Aliassime's serve, as you mentioned earlier. He got him out of some pickles situations sometimes. And the ability of Aliassime to adapt to clay. In this match, I believe he used a bit more of the drop shot, which compared to what he normally does. whilst Rublev, I believe, stayed true to his colors and kept playing his style, which is, I mean, a heavy hitter baseliner without much changes. But it ended up working for him because again he grew through the match. And the second set, I really love this type of sets. Very, very manly, very masculine, big serves, short rallies. It all comes down to the 12th game. And in the 12th game, that's his opportunity. And he takes it, wins 7-5. And then you see the same exact again. Well, then Alessim called the physio, which then illustrates us that he also a bit struggled on his legs. And then to go back to the Alcaraz game. So we saw how Rublev won the Fritz match and he was able to replicate those pressure points, but we also saw the same exact as he did against Alcaraz. So third set starts, second game, that game went for 12 minutes uh, on Felix on serve. He had two break points, did not convert them, but then, as you see, like the match chart and everything, hold serve nicely. Another long game on serve for Aliassime. And when you start to see that, you might start envisioning who's going to win that match. And did not break him again. It went all the way down to 6-5. And again, in the 12th game, he got his opportunity. He only got one match point, and it was a shame that it ended on a double fault. But if you ask me, I'd rather have it ended on the double fault than on the tiebreak in the third set. But that's just me.
And that's a perfect analysis, Stefano. Thank you for that. I just want to add a few things here and there, a few observations. I think in the first set, Felix played perfectly, spotless play from Auger-Aliassime. He hammered his way through service and forehand, a few drop shots. Well, that's the name of the podcast. That's what we like to see. So he did everything right. But then again, just like Alcaraz, Rublev switched it. Not switched it. I don't think it's the right term. He stepped up his game, and that's the sneaky thing that he has, because like you watch one of his games and it looks like he does the same things, he keeps the same level throughout the game, but the secret to that is that he steps up the intensity with which he plays, and that's the secret there. I agree with the technical analysis that you made. Very aggressive play by Rublev. um, I even his kit, the jersey, the green jersey with the stripe in the middle, the white shorts, is so iconic. It looks from a different time, a different age. He looks just out of the 70s. In Italy we had some great players like Adriano Panatta. He looks like that. Even his hairstyle is just crazy to me, and I'm so happy we got to rediscover players like these, players that are not conforming to modernity necessarily. I think his style of tennis is very characteristic. It has personality. He powered through the whole game. He was also lucky because Felix had this kind of injury in the last set. But for sure, kudos to Rublev for winning this. And yeah, I think all in all, it was very very surprising Madrid Open on the ATP side, and I think now it's time to move on to the WTA.
If we can make a final note on Rublev, I
Absolutely.
agree. And also, I believe he's getting better at capitalizing when the uh, level of his opponent slightly drops. So it looks from the outside that he is keeping his level of play constant, but that's going to be enough if the opponent's player level drops. And I think this was the case as well in the final. I think at some point they showed in the first set on the advantage side. Uh, he had 0% of like returned first serves from Aliassime, basically meaning that all the serves were first serves that got in were either winners or unreturned. And you could see that number drop obviously from 100% to 80% to 60%. I actually don't not sure about the number because it didn't show it, but I mean it's unsustainable for Aliassime to always have those serves not returned. And as soon as it drops a little bit, as soon as you get into the rallies, and then it's when Rublev really excelled in this match, I believe as well. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
start talking about the WTA tournament as well. Very, very interesting on that side.
absolutely, Stefano. I want to say that it wasn't as surprising as the men's tournament, just because we did get to see the top players in the semifinals and in the final. So the expectations of the bookmakers were respected. But there are a few upsets in this tournament. I wish Coco Gauff had advanced a little further in this tournament. She was against a fellow American, Keys, in the round of 16, and even though the game was pretty close, Keys ended up advancing up to the semifinals against Swiatek. But I really expected more from Coco Gauff, which is a player that I got to see live last summer here at the Washington D.C. Mubadala Open, and she left a great impression on me. I think that she's very young. I think that physically she's extremely strong, extremely athletic. So I expect a lot from players like Coco Gauff, especially if they are huge stars in America like she is. So I just wanted to gather your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely one of the only few upsets of the women's tournament was Goff losing that match against Madison Keys. Uh, yeah, she was kind of the big absent in the latter stages of the tournament because of that. And yeah, I think people expect to see her kind of blossom a bit more this year, but you also do have to understand amount of pressure they put onto her. Definitely want to see her have a couple of big matches against Viontek and Sabalenka before judging, but yeah, I think she's on the bright path, and I mean it happens to lose again. Uh, uh, People will get to know me as a professional tiebreak hater. And this is also what happened in this match. She lost the tiebreak of the first set. And again, she then won the second set. But if you end up winning that tiebreak, possibly we would be talking a completely different tournament from that point on. And yeah,
Yeah,
winning and
exactly.
losing happen.
I imagine two semifinals: Swiatek versus Coco Gauff and Rybakina versus Sabalenka. In my head, that's the way it should have been. I don't want to take anything away from Keys. She played very well in this tournament. She played at her best, just like we said for Fritz. But yeah, I would have enjoyed to see these two semifinals. While on one side, Rybakina versus Sabalenka was great. It was the game that I wanted to watch. Swiatek versus Keys didn't live up to the expectations, I think.
Well, first of all, to conclude on Goff as well, I'm a big fan also because she is from Miami and she is a massive Miami Dolphins fan, apparently. So am I. So, yeah, I have to support her in the tennis as well, and hopefully I'll get to see her at Wimbledon this year. In terms of, well, I'm actually very surprised about Keys making it all the way to the semifinals. It was not an easy task to come back against Anshaber, especially when you lose the first set, love to 6. And she did it, so hats off. But then she got, how can you say, hurricaned out by Swiatek. But it seems to be like a constant. She just torpedo out every single opponent she faced all the
The
way until the
state of
final.
grace of Iga Świątek in this tournament. Oh my god.
Yeah, so like I can see why people want to see a better kind of competitive semifinal. But I mean, it's a semifinal between the number one in the world of this sport and a person who's basically number 20 in the world, the 20th best person in the world to play this, and she just absolutely destroyed her. And this is how Iga Świątek tennis level was throughout the tournament. And yeah, there's not much you can do on these days when you're against the very, very top players.
Yeah, let me talk about another upset, a small upset that I had in this tournament. Another player that I wish I had seen progress and advance more in the competition, Maria Sakkari. Maria, if you're listening to me, I'm a big fan. I like Sakari because of her personality. I think she has a lot of, in what in Latin America they would call garra. So she puts her art in her games. She's very athletic. She's kind of petite, so she doesn't have the same strength of, for example, Coco Gauff. I watched the women's final here in DC, as I was telling you, Goff versus Sakari. Well, Sakari got torpedoed just like Keys against Viontek in Madrid. But I really wish she stayed up there on the level that she deserves. And this is just one of my pet peeves. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm biased. Uh, I think Sakari can just do a lot better. I don't know if you have opinions on her.
Yeah, let's talk about the player that actually beat Sakari, which was Haddad Maia from Brazil. And she actually was the only player that managed to steal a set from Swiatek throughout the whole tournament. I believe she is a very inconsistent player from what I've seen out of her, but I don't dislike her, and she's been in the top 20 in the world for at least 1 year for sure. And yeah, fun story about her actually, because in Wimbledon, when you go to the courts, you just they're not reserved seats, so you just go there and hold on to your seat. So if you want to see a men's match, it's best if you go way earlier. And if it is preceded by a women's match, it's best to go
Hmm.
before the women's match.
Hmm.
And so I ended up seeing 3 matches of Haddad Maya because of this, because she was always scheduled to play before the men's matches I was looking for. But it was a pleasure to see her go throughout the tournament, and she actually had a good run at Wimbledon. And it was a good run for her as well in this tournament, beating Navarro and beating Sakari, which is not an easy task again. But yeah, it wasn't the biggest of surprises to me to see Sakari go out in that fashion. I actually think the kind of biggest upset, in my opinion, was I think round of 32, where Sheriff from Egypt beat Kostyuk,
Mm.
which also I believe she had a good opportunity to make
Hmm.
a deeper run in this tournament, but she just didn't. And Svitolina as well, but you could have expected it from Svitolina to not go far in this tournament anyway.
Yeah, too many disappointments, Stefano. Let's talk about the good things. And we've already touched upon Swiatek versus Keys. There's not much to say there. Swiatek just beat Keys on every single aspect. I want to go to the good stuff, which in this case is Rybakina versus Sabalenka, the other semifinal. Where do I start? Where do I start? Let me start from Sabalenka and the mental recovery that she has made from her personal things in the last month that we all know already, I believe, is just impressive. She came back on the courts and she's the same Sabalenka that she's always been. And that's not something to give for granted. I think that physically, she has paid a toll in the both in the semifinal and in the final. I think that physically she's at her 70%. And we got to see that in the first set against Rybakina, where Sabalenka got annihilated, I think. She just, in my opinion, she just wasn't there mentally. But then something happened in the second set. I think it was the third or fourth game of the set, and we were talking about Rublev and how he stepped it up. Here, it was a complete switch from Sabalenka. Something lit up, something happened in her mind, and she really started playing great tennis. And I'm a sucker for Aryna Sabalenka because I like, as I said, I like passionate players. I don't understand players like Rybakina that you never know what's going on through their mind. With Sabalenka, you always know if she loses, you know if she wins a point, she celebrates. Um, in every single exchange, you know what's going on in your mind. And I think that's her superpower. That's how you get close to her as a spectator. Um, that's something great about Aryna Sabalenka. Well, Rybakina, great technique, great player, stone cold, and that can be a quality sometimes. But in this match, it was also the thing that made her lose. I believe. I don't know your thoughts about this match, Stefano, but mine are very strong opinions, as you've seen.
Well, it is never easy to come back when you're down one set on a break, um, but yeah, that's as you said, like yeah, completely switched on after that point. And again, as I said earlier, this is a point I would like to stress again. We expect them to be machines all the time as fans, but it's just not the way it is. And they also have their personal life, and it can affect. And we see it also in other sports and other i- great stories that come out of it. I don't know if you know, for instance, Brett Favre playing
Hmm.
a Monday night match after
Hmm.
the day after his father died, and it was one of his best
Yeah.
performances ever. Those are great stories, of course, but you will never blame him for sitting out of that match. And in tennis, especially, this aspect might be uh, much harder to grasp because if you don't play, you don't get points. If you don't get points, you don't get money. So you always constantly have to be out there independently of what goes on. But it would be also stupid from our perspective to think that it will not affect the way they play. So having said that, I actually like this kind of stone cold type of thing about players like Rybakina. Sinner himself, he's a master at that. And yeah, we were talking earlier as well against Sinner Chakhanov game. Like we could see from the outside Chakhanov kind of break down a bit, and imagine how he looked in Sinner's eye, who has the predator mindset of attacking him in that moment, and this is kind of the same. So I do like emotional players as well, but you also don't want to show it to your opponent when you're on the down. So you kind of like
Hmm.
have to. It's there's also that bit that I really like about tennis, like to show and not show your emotions can play a big part of the match. And Rybakina, she's as cold as it gets, and I think it's actually a virtue for her. And I see her more like a finesse player, like great technique,
Yes.
smooth, but yeah, sometimes doesn't might not have the killer instinct. Let's call it like that. Uh, that other top players, like in this, I think this was a case of that. That just Sabalenka went into kind of predator killer mode and managed to get out of a situation that was sincerely getting out of hand, because I mean she was just a couple of games from losing, and it was an unentertaining third set. A very, very type of games I like,
Mm.
and no break points, only serves.
Let me add a few things on this match, to what you said. I think that yes, showing your emotions when you're winning is something very useful. But don't you think that even when you're losing, showing your fatigue, how tired you are, how upset you are, can also be not a strategy, because I don't think it's a strategy for Sabalenka, but it can also be um, persuading the other player who is on the winning side to relax a little bit, and allow themselves to take the competition down one notch. um, I think that's something that happens, not at these levels, but for sure with less mentally strong players that do not have that killer instinct that you were talking about. So yeah, I'm a big fan of showing emotions during tennis anyway, not just when you're winning. And I believe that Sabalenka, just like Rublev, is one of those players that need a challenge, that need to feel like they're against the wall and against the rest of the world, in order to step it up. That's the only way that they get better, and that's what she did, both against Rybakina, which I love. I think she's a great player. I came across the other day a YouTube video where Alcaraz crosses her. I'm not sure where they were, and he just goes to say hi to her, and she completely ignores him. And I love that. I love to think that she's just that stone cold in her personal life as well. That would be very funny to me. Um, and again, talking about Sabalenka, this challenge mode that she has, that's also something that she brought into the final against Świątek. The problem, and now we can talk about the final. The problem there is that yes, Sabalenka lost the first set, and sometime at the start of the second set, she had this switch again that we were talking about, and she won the second set. But in the first set, it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful game, a beautiful match, beautiful tennis. And I think Sabalenka didn't make it, not because of herself, because she did this mental switch the right way, just like she did in the semifinal. But on the other side, Iga Świątek said, "No, not this time. This year, this rematch, it's me who's gonna win Madrid." So I think that's what happened. I believe that Iga Świątek can also be a stone cold player, but she shows feelings sometimes when she's in trouble. You can see her like with her arm, you know, being excited for winning a point, which is something that I've never seen from Rybakina, for example. So yes, Swiatek is a cold player, but she has feelings. What do you think, Stefano?
Yeah, I would say she's rather cool than cold. So yeah, that's a good assessment. And when you said earlier, like she's looking for a challenge, and I was about to say yes, and she found the challenge she wanted in the final, because yeah, you can't really have any bad words for the way Swiatek plays tennis, especially at that level. And yeah, these matches all come down again to very few points as well. I believe Swiatek played marginally better, and it also reflected. Let's just make an example here. The women's final, we had 121 points won for Swiatek and 116 for Sabalenka. So the difference between the two was merely 5 points, and in these type of matches it can happen. And if you just do a comparison with the men's final, where Aliassime won 100 points and Rublev had 114, you can clearly see that there's a bigger difference there. And I actually believe Rublev deserved it more than Swiatek to win. But yeah, it was a closer match actually than many people believe it would be. I think uh, plenty of the people, including the odds from the bookmakers, saw Swiatek as a very heavy favorite. Well, let's say good favorite, but yeah, kudos to Sabalenka. Again, Sabalenka spent a bit more time on court going into the final. A very tough match against Rybakina, and both psychologically and physically. Whilst, as we said earlier, Swiatek just really made a meal out of every opponent she faced, and that played a bit, but in the end, not that much. But I guess what we can all agree on is that it's not fun to end a tournament on a third set tiebreaker, because it literally is a coin flip at that point. It can go both ways, and I would rather have it as a longer format and have them play out until one of them just physically collapses, and that's part of the game.
Yeah, yeah. I think we got lucky with this final because we got to see, as I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but it was just some beautiful tennis, a great competition between two great players, perhaps the best two in the world in the WTA classify. So that's just as a spectator. That's just what I wanted to see. I couldn't have asked for anything better. So I'm really pleased with this women's final. I'm really pleased with Madrid so far. I think we had a lot of surprises on the men's side. We got what we were looking for on the women's side. So we can really complain, honestly. And in order to conclude this episode, Stefano, we are approaching now Rome. I've already started seeing some Instagram stories from some Italian friends in Rome, and I have all kinds of FOMO already because I wish I was there to see some great tennis. What are the expectations that we have for this tournament?
Yeah, so Rome, again, just like Madrid, it will be a joint Masters, so both women's and men's, and qualifications are already underway. And for men's, we are expecting a lot of Italians. Literally, all the wildcards went to Italians, including Fognini. So yeah, there will be a lot of Italian players, and we as Italians have a good pool of talent for men's, with even more players breaking into the top 60. So there's a good feeling, there's a good vibe around the tournament. Tennis is gaining more interest as well in Italy compared to the last 20 years, also thanks to Sinner. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think of kind of expect the same on the women's side. For the men's side, there would be big absences. Yeah, of course, Sinner, I think Alcaraz already withdrew, and Medvedev is still he's enrolled in the tournament, but I'm not sure he will show up. Believe he's also defending, but you will also see Djokovic coming back, so it's gonna be interesting again. Very grueling part of the season. I expect a bounce back from Tsitsipas, who got eliminated basically in the first round, and Zverev as well. Rude can play a big role always on clay. Nadal gonna be his last run in Rome. So yeah, lots to look forward to in the next weeks and at Roland Garros at the end of the month.
So basically, Stefano, you're saying that Djokovic is the favorite here, or am I wrong? And
Eh,
speaking about
unless
Italian
you get
players,
injured, unless you get injured.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, he's coming from a rest period and he really wants to play on clay because of the Olympics. I don't see him losing.
And speaking about young Italian players and Djokovic himself, we have witnessed a few weeks ago a great victory on him from young Luca Nardi. Are we going to see him in this tournament, as far as you know?
Yeah, I think he's in the main draw already without the wild card. I believe his ranking is pretty much high enough for him to be straight in. Let me just get it. Yeah,
And
he's like we got beaten lucky with the wild cards like Gigante and Zapieri. Zapieri also very interesting prospect. They got drawn against each other in the first round. You got Darderi, you got Cobolli also
mhm.
without the need of qualifications. Berrettini is gonna be back. Arnaldi will be there, and yes, Nardi. Yeah, I can confirm Nardi is already in the main draw without any qualifications required, and he's gonna face Rune in the second round if it makes it there. So that's gonna be fun as
Ouch.
well.
Ouchie. Well, I have my eye on Luca Nardi. I really like him as a player, and I think I want to say that he's gonna do well in the next few months and years. But I don't want to spoil it for him. And let's have a little provision on the women's side. Personally, I still think it's gonna be. Is Viontek participating? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's enrolled. She has the one
So
seed. So
I
yeah,
think I
pretty
think
much
she's
the
still.
roster for women is the same.
Yeah, I still think Swiatek is has the favors towards her. I think she's gonna win this, but I might be wrong.
I like these storylines in sports. Again, I have a feeling of repeat of this tournament, and it will come down to the same final. But maybe Sabalenka this time will make it through. It would be interesting to see them face again in the final, and perhaps Kokogov obviously going a bit
Hmm.
deeper in the tournament as well. It's something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I agree with you, Stefano. Thank you so much for being with me in the first very episode of Drop Shot. We will talk about Rome, of course, very soon. So stay tuned. If you're listening through Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you are listening on an iPhone, you can go on Apple Podcast and write your review. Just a few thoughts. It's like 30 seconds, but it makes the whole difference for us. And again, thank you, Stefano, my fellow Italian, for being with me.
Thank you, Michele. Always a pleasure.
All right, listeners. And I think I'm gonna set up an Instagram page for this podcast, but show us our love first, and we have a lot to give you back. And see you in the next episode.